All right, so you sent us this video, and the title is something else. It's like, Liberal Professor MOCKS Melania Trump in front of Barron. His response leaves everyone speechless.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, come on, who wouldn't click on that?
Yeah, no kidding.
But before we get all caught up in the drama,
Right.
let's take a deep dive into this and see what's really going on here.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at the claims that the video is making and how it's, trying to shape our perception of this whole event.
Absolutely. I think you're right to be cautious about this. The title itself, I mean, just looking at it, you can see it's a masterclass in emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
They're using words like MOCKS and speechless.
Right.
And really, it's all designed to trigger like an immediate reaction in you before you even know any of the facts. It's like a brightly colored lure designed to hook your attention.
Yeah, those lures work. So tell me, what is the story this video is trying to tell us?
Well, so the video claims that there was this encounter at some academic event, and there was this liberal professor who made some kind of comment about Melania Trump's Be Best campaign. And according to the video, Barron Trump was there and responded in a way that shocked everyone.
Wait a minute, hold on. Barron was a guest speaker at a high-profile academic event.
Yeah, that's what the video says.
That's where I get a little skeptical. It feels like they're trying to frame him, in a particular way, maybe even elevate his status a little bit.
That's a really interesting point. And it's actually a tactic that's often used, when you're talking about political figures and especially their families.
Right.
You place them in this sort of prestigious setting. And it kind of boosts their credibility, and it makes the supposed response seem even more impactful.
Yeah, it's interesting because it plays into, I think, everyone's sort of natural curiosity about, children of famous people. We want to know how they navigate the world, especially when their parents are such polarizing figures.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like this video is definitely tapping into that.
Yeah.
It's presenting Barron not just as some passive observer,
Yeah.
but as this young man who's capable of defending his family and, standing up for what he believes in.
But the way the video portrays this defense is interesting, too. They describe the professor's words as a snide remark and a sarcastic comment. And then they use terms like hypocritical and insincere when they're referring to Melania's campaign.
You're picking up on some really important stuff. This is what we call biased language.
Oh, okay.
It's where the video is using loaded words to try to influence how we perceive the situation.
Gotcha.
By basically painting the professor as the aggressor and Barron as the victim. They're already shaping our opinions before we've even heard what was said.
It's like they're writing the script for us, telling us exactly how we should feel about this.
Exactly. And it's so important to recognize these subtle cues and ask ourselves, are we forming our own opinions, or are we just kind of adopting the ones that are being fed to us?
Okay, so the videos set the stage with this tense encounter.
Right.
What happens next?
Okay, so according to the video, Barron stands up
Okay.
and addresses the professor directly in response to this, supposed slight against his mother.
Okay.
And then the video just keeps praise on Barron, highlighting his poise, his articulation and courage.
Of course they do.
Right.
It's like they're creating this whole hero narrative complete with the valiant young man defending his family's honor.
You got it. This is a perfect example of how narratives are constructed.
Yeah.
To appeal to our emotions and really shape how we perceive these events. The video is using very specific language to cast Barron in this very positive light, while at the same time demonizing the professor.
And it's not just the language either. It's like the video focuses heavily on the viewer reactions, and all of which conveniently praise Barron and condemn the professor.
That's another really clever tactic.
Really?
It's called bandwagoning. And it plays on our very human desire to conform. So by showing all these people approving of Barron's actions, the video makes viewers feel like they're part of this larger group.
Right.
That shares their outrage.
So it's like saying, hey, look, everyone agrees with us, so you should too.
Exactly. It's like a subtle form of pressure.
Yeah.
And it's designed to silence any dissenting voices and reinforce the narrative they want you to believe.
It's a good reminder to always check your own BS meter.
Always.
Especially when you're watching something that feels so designed to provoke a strong reaction.
Absolutely.
It's like this whole thing is a reminder of how easy it is to be manipulated by these carefully crafted narratives.
Totally.
Especially when they tap into our emotions and our pre-existing biases.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This video is like a textbook example
Yeah.
of how information can be presented to confirm our existing beliefs, even when the evidence is, kind of thin or one-sided.
And that brings me to another point. While we've been sort of, dissecting the video's presentation, we haven't really talked about if any of this actually happened.
That's a great point, and it's really important to think critically about that. We're kind of just taking the video's word for it,
Right?
but as we've been discussing, their account is heavily biased, and it's missing a lot of important details.
It's like we're only getting one side of the story.
Exactly.
And then being asked to judge the whole situation.
Yeah, you're missing that crucial context and perspective.
Exactly. So without more information, it's impossible to know if this video is really giving a fair and balanced account of what happened. Like, were the professor's words taken out of context? Or was there more to the interaction than they're letting on?
Right. Those are all really important questions.
We can't answer those just from watching this video.
No, not at all.
But-
It makes you wonder, like, what would the professor's side of the story be?
Yeah.
If they had the opportunity to share their perspective.
Right, because maybe they felt like their words were misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Or that the video twisted things, to fit a certain narrative.
Yeah, it's like a classic case of missing information.
It feels like a reminder to be wary of single-source information,
Absolutely.
especially when it's presented with such a clear agenda.
For sure. So how do we develop a more discerning eye?
Yeah, like how can our listener, how can they spot this kind of stuff?
Well, one of the most important skills is media literacy.
Okay.
It's the ability to analyze and evaluate media messages,
Gotcha.
recognize biases, identify persuasive techniques, and separate fact from opinion.
So it's about looking beyond the surface and digging a little deeper.
Exactly. Asking those tough questions like, who created this content?
Right.
What's their purpose? What techniques are they using to try and persuade me?
Uh-huh.
And maybe the most important question, what information is missing?
And what about fact-checking? How can our listener, make sure they're not being misled by false or misleading information?
Fact-checking is super important.
Yeah.
Like a good rule of thumb is to never rely on just one source.
Yeah.
You always want to cross-reference information, seek out reputable sources, and look for evidence that supports whatever claims are being made.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of work.
It is.
But I guess in today's world where information spreads so quickly, it's kind of essential.
It really is. But the good news is there are tons of resources out there to help, like fact-checking websites,
Okay.
reputable news organizations, even browser extensions can help flag potentially misleading content.
Those are all great tips. And I think it's also important to just be aware of our own biases.
Oh, absolutely.
We all have them.
We do.
And they can definitely influence how we interpret information.
So true. Recognizing our own biases helps us approach information with more objectivity
Right.
and skepticism. It's about constantly questioning our own assumptions
Okay.
and being open to different perspectives.
So we've talked about media literacy, fact-checking, and being aware of our own biases. Are there any other tools, that our listener can use to sort of navigate this whole crazy information landscape?
I think one of the best tools is honestly just slowing down.
Okay.
We're constantly being bombarded with information.
Yeah, for sure.
It's easy to get caught up in the flow,
Totally.
but just taking a pause, reflecting on what we're consuming,
Yeah.
and asking critical questions can make all the difference.
It's like hitting the pause button on the information superhighway and taking a second to actually look at the map.
Exactly. It's about being mindful consumers of information,
Yeah.
not just passive recipients. And remembering that critical thinking is a muscle. It gets stronger with practice.
This has been a really insightful conversation
Yeah.
about, the power of narratives and the importance of critical thinking.
Absolutely.
And all these tools we can use to be more discerning about the information we're taking.
It's been great diving into this with you.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even seemingly simple content can have all these layers of meaning and manipulation when you start to peel back the surface.
And it's also a reminder that we all have this responsibility to be critical thinkers. Question what we see and hear and seek out the full story. So now let's circle back to this specific video
Okay.
and consider what it might be trying to achieve, beyond just presenting this encounter between Barron Trump and this professor.
That's a great point. While the video focuses on this specific incident, It also tries to connect it to these larger societal issues.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, look, this one incident proves everything we've been saying about the other side.
You got it. This is a classic tactic.
It's called generalization.
Okay.
And it's basically taking a specific instance
Right.
and using it to make these broad statements about a whole group or issue.
And it can be super persuasive.
It can.
Especially when it taps into those existing beliefs and anxieties.
Absolutely.
Mm.
By framing this incident as part of a bigger pattern, the video wants to validate those anxieties and reinforce a very particular worldview. It's about creating that sense of us versus them, where one side is good and the other side is inherently bad.
It's that classic divide and conquer tactic.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder to be wary of any narrative that tries to oversimplify these complex issues or paint entire groups with a broad brush.
This idea of connecting a specific incident to broader societal issues is interesting. It's like a way to give the video more weight, more importance.
You're right. It elevates the stakes and makes it seem like more than just a personal dispute.
Yeah.
It becomes this symbol, this battleground for these competing ideologies.
And that can be really effective in getting people emotionally invested in the story.
For sure.
Right.
It taps into our desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
To fight for a cause we believe in.
And in this case, the cause they're presenting is respect for traditional values, family figures of authority.
All very powerful themes.
Yeah, especially in a culture where those values are often seen as under attack.
Exactly. By tapping into those anxieties, the video creates this sense of urgency and tries to mobilize viewers to action.
It's like a call to arms, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah.
Like defend these values, push back against those who threaten them.
Exactly.
But it also brings up some questions, like, are they presenting a balanced view? Are they oversimplifying a complex issue? And most importantly, what are their motives for framing the story this way?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to that critical thinking.
Yeah.
We should never just blindly accept any narrative, no matter how compelling it seems.
So it's about, questioning the messenger, considering the source, and looking for evidence to support the claims.
Exactly. Be an active participant in the information exchange, not just a passive recipient.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about how the video ends.
Okay.
It ends by encouraging viewers to share their thoughts and engage in discussion.
Yes, the call to action.
Right.
Classic technique to engage viewers and get the message out there.
It feels like they're trying to turn this whole incident into a rallying cry for a certain political ideology.
You're right on the money. It's about tapping into the power of social media to amplify their message and create this sense of collective outrage.
And that outrage can be a powerful motivator.
It is.
Driving people to share the video, comment on it, debate it, which of course spreads their message even further.
Exactly. They want to turn passive viewers into active participants, advocates for their cause.
But we have to remember, this call to action is coming from a source with an agenda.
Absolutely. They're not just encouraging open dialogue.
Right.
They want to shape that dialogue, steer it in a particular direction.
So it's like planting a seed and then very carefully nurturing it to grow in a specific way.
That's a perfect analogy. It really highlights the importance of being aware of the forces shaping these online conversations.
Right.
Who is driving the narrative? What are their motives? And are they presenting a balanced view?
It's about taking a step back and saying, who benefits from this story being told this way?
Exactly. And even these seemingly harmless calls to action can be part of a bigger strategy to influence public opinion.
This has been such a fascinating discussion.
Yeah, it has.
About the power of narrative and the importance of critical thinking and all these techniques that are used to shape our conversations online.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Same here.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered, to approach information with a healthy amount of skepticism.
Absolutely.
And a desire to uncover the full story.
Now let's bring it all back to our listener who sent us this video.
Okay.
What are some key takeaways, that they can apply to their own media consumption?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that even seemingly simple content can be packed with all these subtle, persuasive techniques.
Yeah.
Like, this video is a prime example of how language framing and emotional appeals can shape how we perceive events.
So it's a reminder that we shouldn't just passively absorb information.
No.
But really actively engage with it, question it, seek out different perspectives.
Exactly.
Become more conscious consumers of information, aware of those forces that are trying to influence us.
What about this specific video? What should our listener be thinking about as they process this information?
I think the most important question to ask is, if this incident happened as described, is the video giving us a fair and balanced account?
And I think based on our analysis, the answer is probably not.
Probably not.
We've seen how they've used selective information biased language,
Mm-hmm.
emotional appeals to really shape the narrative.
Right. And without hearing the other side of the story,
Yeah.
we can't really know if the professor's actions were as bad as the video makes them seem.
It's like there are always multiple perspectives to every story.
Always.
And it's important to consider all of them before forming an opinion.
Absolutely. And sometimes the most important perspectives are the ones that are missing.
Right.
Or deliberately left out.
So what are some questions our listener could ask themselves to uncover those missing perspectives?
Well, you could ask, what was the context of the professor's comment? Okay.
Was it really meant as mockery, or could it have been interpreted differently?
What about the audience's reaction? Was everyone really speechless, or did some people agree with the professor?
And maybe the most important question, what was the professor's intent?
Right.
Were they genuinely trying to be disrespectful, or were they just expressing a different opinion?
Those are all really great questions.
Mm-hmm.
It really encourages our listener to think critically.
Yes.
And not just accept the video's narrative at face value.
Exactly. Cultivate that critical thinking mindset and be an active participant in the information exchange.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We started with this clickbait video, and we ended up exploring, some really important concepts about media literacy and critical thinking
Mm-hmm.
and the power of narrative.
It's been a pleasure joining you on this journey,
Likewise.
and I hope our listeners feel empowered to approach all information with a healthy dose of skepticism
Yeah.
and a desire to uncover that full story.
It's like we've been peeling back the layers of an onion with this video, revealing all these, complexities underneath.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is how this whole thing about Barron Trump
Right.
can actually help us understand so much more about the media we see every day.
Absolutely. That's what I love about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at one piece of content.
Right.
We're using it to understand bigger trends and techniques
Yeah.
and even our own biases.
And in this case, the video is like a perfect example of how these narratives are created, and spread in the digital age.
Yeah.
It's not just about presenting information. It's about shaping how people see things, making them feel certain emotions,
Sure.
and ultimately influencing what they do.
It's really striking how this video taps into these deep human tendencies.
Oh, yeah.
Our brains are wired to look for patterns, to make quick judgments, and to, go along with what everyone else is doing.
Right. And those tendencies, they can be exploited.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Especially online where everything spreads so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And, critical thinking can be tough.
It's like this perfect storm of, cognitive biases and technology,
Yeah.
creating this environment where misinformation can just thrive.
Right. And even the smartest people can get fooled.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
That's why it's more important than ever to think critically.
Yeah.
Hone those media literacy skills
Okay.
and approach online content with a good dose of skepticism.
So what are some actual steps, that our listener can take
Okay.
to become more discerning about the information they're consuming?
Well, one of the best strategies is to get your information from different sources.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one news outlet or website or,
Okay.
social media feed.
Right.
Actively look for different perspectives, even ones that challenge your own beliefs.
It's like cross-training for your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Exposing it to all these different views so it gets better at analyzing information.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to question everything.
Like what kinds of questions?
Like who made this? What's their agenda? Are they showing all sides of the story?
So it's like becoming an information detective.
Yes.
Always searching for clues to
Mhm.
understand what you're really looking at.
And don't forget about your emotions.
Oh, right.
We talked about how this video uses emotional appeals
Right.
to kind of bypass your critical thinking
Yeah.
and get you to react without really thinking. So when you see something that makes you feel strongly,
Mm-hmm.
take a step back
Okay.
and ask yourself, am I reacting based on logic or am I being played?
It's like taking a moment to really assess the situation.
Exactly. And remember, critical thinking, it's a skill.
Okay.
It takes time and practice,
Mm-hmm.
patience, and a willingness to challenge yourself.
And sometimes it means admitting you were wrong.
Yeah, sometimes.
You know that you fell for something.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Being a critical thinker means being open to changing your mind when you see new evidence.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listener with one final thought. We've talked about how this video might be trying to make Barron Trump look good,
Right.
but what if we looked at it from the other side?
Oh, okay.
What if the professor was also trying to shape the narrative?
Interesting.
You know, to position themselves as a defender of a certain ideology.
That's such a good point.
Hmm.
It shows how everyone involved in a story,
Yeah.
even the people who seem like victims,
Yeah.
they can still try to use the situation to their advantage.
So even the simplest stories can be full of hidden agendas and manipulation.
Absolutely. It's like everyone is trying to present themselves in a certain way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just shows how important it is to never take anything at face value.
There's always more to uncover.
Right.
More to question, more to learn.
This deep dive has been a really fascinating look at media literacy, critical thinking,
Yeah.
and how powerful narratives can be in the digital age.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
Same here.
And I hope our listener feels empowered to keep exploring and questioning the information they see out there.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.